All right, let's do it. Paris. We're diving deep today into Paris visitor essentials, etiquette, safety, and interactions. The guide's not just being another tourist, but like really experiencing the city, not sticking out, blending in.
It really is the key, I think. This guide gets into all the details that can totally change your trip. Those subtle things from like how to say hello the Parisian way to, well, not being awkward in those sometimes tricky social moments.
You're so right. The guide makes a big deal about saying bonjour, madame, monsieur. It seems like it's more than just being polite, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's like a whole code, a way to show respect deeper than just please and thank you. It says, hey, I see you as a person, which is like huge in French culture. Makes me think about all those times I've messed up greetings in other countries and how that probably changed everything.
Oh, tell me about it. Like that time I was in Italy and thought my Spanish would work, the looks I got.
Exactly. Those little things can make you feel like you're on the outside, So that bonjour, madame, monsieur, even if your French is bad, can really set the mood. Now, the guide also talks about this whole thing of Parisians being rude.
Yeah.
I bet you've heard that, right?
Totally. It's like the classic Paris stereotype.
Right. And the guide kind of flips it around and says often it's not rudeness, but just how they communicate. Fast-paced city, so everyone's kind of clipped. It's like a whole different beat to life there. Makes me think of that time I was in New York. Felt like everyone was on fast forward compared to where I'm from.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that New York energy. But it's not like they're being mean. It's just the vibe, I felt the same way in Tokyo.
Totally. So Paris tip. Embrace the cool. Don't overthink it. And remember, it's probably not you they're rushing.
Love that. Embrace the Parisian cool. Speaking of cool, the guide gets into fashion too. Parisians just nail that effortless style. What struck you about their approach?
It's all about being elegant without trying too hard. Nothing too flashy, no big logos, It's more about nice fabrics, classic looks, that certain je ne sais quoi. The guide says smart casual is the way to go. Like tailored pants, nice shirt, maybe a scarf. You look sharp without looking like you're trying too hard,
It's like they make it look so easy. And the guide mentions dressing right for certain places, like churches or fancy restaurants.
Totally. Got to read the room and dress for the occasion. Always good advice. Like going to Notre Dame, you wouldn't want to be wearing, anything too revealing or super casual.
Gotta respect the place, yeah. All right, let's get real about safety. Always top of mind when traveling, especially a big city like Paris. The guide mentions some areas where you might need to be extra careful, especially at night. Any places jump out at you?
They specifically mention Barbier-Rochefort and Stalingrad. They're both up north in Paris. And then there's the suburb of Saint-Denis. These spots can feel a bit sketchy, especially after dark. Best to just be aware and maybe plan your day around that.
Good to know. It's like anywhere, some areas are better to avoid, especially when you don't know your way around. What other safety stuff did you find helpful?
The guide really pushes being aware, like really looking around, especially in the metro when it's packed or on streets that aren't well lit. Pickpockets are real, so keep your bag zipped, wallets in your front pockets, phone tucked away. I always use a crossbody bag. Keeps things close to my body, makes it harder to grab and go.
Smart. I try to never look like I'm carrying tons of valuables, blend in as much as possible.
That's the idea. Less risk, less chance of being a target.
Okay, so we talked about first impressions, that Parisian attitude, and staying safe. Now, what about, talking to people? The guide has tips for that, too.
The big one is try to speak French first, even if it's just a few words. Shows respect. Shows you want to be part of things. It made me realize I always default to English, but even a simple bonjour or merci can make a difference.
Oh, I'm a big believer in that. I remember this little bakery in Paris. My French was terrible, but I tried ordering in French. And even though I probably sounded ridiculous, the baker was so nice. It's about the effort,
Totally. It really changes how people react to you.
So use your French, be respectful, and don't be that obnoxious tourist.
Got it. Now, I always wonder about avoiding tourist traps. Those crazy, expensive cafes near the Eiffel Tower or on the Champs-Élysées. What's the guide say about that?
They say get off the main drag. Explore those side streets, those little places where Parisians hang out. You'll find authentic spots, better prices, and a real slice of Paris. Reminds me of that tiny bistro we found in the Marais district.
Oh, that place was amazing. Food was incredible, so cozy, and the prices were reasonable. Totally worth getting a little lost for that.
Exactly. That's the fun of exploring. And speaking of, the guide also talks about getting on Parisian time.
Yeah, like those midday closures for lunch. That's it. Lunch is usually from noon to 2 and dinner 7 to 10. If you're used to eating later, you might need to adjust. And always check the hours for museums and shops. Lots of them close on Mondays or have weird Sunday hours. It's all about planning ahead and being flexible.
Flexibility, yeah, that's key. Speaking of planning ahead, the guide mentions the metro. It can be a bit of a beast, right?
Oh, the Paris Metro. It's amazing for getting around, but it can be a lot, especially at rush hour. The guide points out those busy stations like Châtelet-Les Halles or Gare du Nord can be pickpocket central. Extra vigilance is key there.
Sounds like real-life Pac-Man dodging pickpockets. Seriously, though, keep your stuff close and be aware, especially during rush hour.
Even when it's not so crowded, stick to well-lit, busy streets at night.
Hmm.
The guide says no wandering down empty alleys or parks after dark. Places like the Bois de Boulogne can get really isolated.
Solid advice for any city, really. Safety first, always.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about blending in. The guide says one of the best ways to do that is not being that loud, obnoxious tourist.
Oh yeah, the ones who seem to forget they're not in their own living room. I always try to be mindful of my volume, especially in public. It's just about being respectful of those around you.
Right. And respecting the city, too. The guide reminds us that Paris has strict rules about smoking. No smoking indoors, no smoking near playgrounds, not even on those train platforms. So if you smoke, got to be careful where you light up. Those fines can be hefty.
It's about knowing the rules, right? Are there any, unspoken rules on the metro?
Definitely etiquette things to keep in mind, like letting people off the train before you get on. Seems obvious, but it's amazing how many people forget that simple courtesy. It's those little things that make it a better experience for everyone.
Now, I've always wondered, is haggling a thing in Paris?
Good question. The guy says, not really, except for maybe at flea markets. Places like that famous Marché aux Puces, you might be able to get a better price if you're feeling bold.
It sounds like a treasure hunt. But in shops and restaurants, best to stick to the prices and avoid any awkward bargaining moments.
Yeah, it's about understanding the local way of doing things.
Speaking of, the guide mentions being aware of Parisian hours when it comes to eating out or shopping, like shops closing for lunch in the afternoon or having limited Sunday hours.
And like we said, lunch is usually between noon and 2, dinner from 7 to 10. If you're planning a late dinner, you might need to shift your schedule around a bit.
Flexible, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of being prepared, the guide says to always have a copy of your passport. Hotels often hold on to the original, And it's good to have your embassy's number handy, just in case.
Great tip. Better safe than sorry. Speaking of being safe, what does the guide say about emergencies in Paris?
Know the emergency number. It's 112 for France. The guide also says to carry a little card with your hotel's address on it, just in case you get lost or need to talk to someone who doesn't speak English. And having your embassy's number is crucial if anything serious happens.
Those are good practical tips. That one about the hotel address especially, not everyone speaks English and you might not always have internet for translations.
Thinking ahead, being ready for anything, it makes a difference.
Okay, let's talk about going beyond those typical tourist spots. The guide mentions getting out of the city center, exploring those unique neighborhoods that make Paris so special.
From the artsy Montmartre to the super chic Saint-Germain-des-Prés, each district has its own personality, its own charm. It's like finding little hidden treasures all over the city.
And seeing the city like a local, away from the crowds, I remember getting totally lost in the Marais and finding the most amazing falafel place. It's those random discoveries that make a trip.
And that's what this guide is about, helping you experience Paris. Really experience it like a pro.
And for those pro tips, the guide has some smart advice on handling money in Paris. What financial stuff stood out to you?
Most places take credit cards these days, but the guide says have some cash on you, especially for little things or when you're at a market. Know the exchange rate too, and avoid those ATMs with crazy fees. It's about being smart with your money and making those euros last.
Makes sense. Okay, let's lighten things up. What about people watching? Paris is like a stage for observing life, right? It's a constant stream of interesting people and fashion. What does the guide say about that?
They say, enjoy it. Just watch. Soak up the energy, the everyday life, the diversity. Take a moment to appreciate what makes Paris so interesting to look at.
It's those little things like friends laughing at a cafe or an older couple walking along the Seine hand in hand, That's the real Paris.
Absolutely. Reminds you that Paris is a city full of life, a mix of people and stories.
Speaking of iconic Paris experiences, we can't forget the Eiffel Tower. The guide gives you practical tips for planning your visit, like buying tickets ahead of time and choosing the best time of day to avoid the crowds.
And it reminds us that the view from up there is incredible. A panorama of the whole city, breathtaking. It's one of those moments you just don't forget.
Yeah, a reminder that Paris really sparkles, both literally and figuratively.
It really does. And speaking of sparkle, what about nightlife? Paris has quite the reputation for that.
Oh, the nightlife. From fancy cabarets to those trendy nightclubs, there's a lot to choose from if you want to dance the night away.
And we can't forget the jazz clubs. Live music, a glass of wine, so cozy.
It's a city that really comes alive after dark.
But you can also find quiet corners, for a romantic evening.
Right. A walk along the Seine under the moonlight or dinner in a little bistro. Paris definitely sets the mood for romance.
It's a city that, well, it just steals your heart no matter who you are or what you like to do. Now, going back to exploring beyond the tourist spots, the guide really wants us to get to know those neighborhoods that make up the city.
I love that. Wandering through different arrondissements, finding those hidden gems, the little boutiques, the cafes, those markets. Each neighborhood has its own personality.
Exactly. It's about seeing the city like a local, getting away from the tourist traps. Those authentic encounters are what make a trip memorable.
It's like you're peeling back the layers of Paris and discovering its secrets. And speaking of layers, the history of this city is incredible. Every corner feels like it's whispering stories of the past.
The guide really digs into that history. It wants us to know the stories behind those famous landmarks and monuments. Each one has something to tell us, a piece of the puzzle of Paris' history.
From Roman times to the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, the French Revolution, Paris has seen it all. Amazing to think about all the lives, all the events that have shaped the city.
Yeah, it's more than just a pretty city. It's a living thing with a story to tell. And we get to be part of that, listening to that story, learning from it.
And what about the art scene in Paris? The museums and galleries are world famous.
Oh, for sure. The Louvre, with those iconic works like the Mona Lisa, Venus de Milo, the Musée d'Orsay with its incredible Impressionist and Post-Impressionist art. There's something for everyone. But it's not just about the big museums. The guide also wants us to check out the smaller galleries and studios around the city where you can find both established and up-and-coming artists. You might just find your new favorite artist.
It's like art is everywhere you look, from grand museums to tiny street art installations. And speaking of creative expression, there's the food. French cuisine is legendary.
Ah, yes, the food. Paris is a foodie's dream. Michelin star restaurants, those cozy bistros serving traditional French food. And let's not forget those pastries, tempting us from every bakery window. Food in Paris is an art form. It's a city where every meal is a chance to indulge.
So true. Okay, shifting gears a bit, let's talk transportation. The guide gives a good overview of the public transport system in Paris.
Yeah, it covers everything. The metro network, buses, trams, it's all there.
Yeah.
It can seem a bit overwhelming at first, but the guide breaks it down so it's easy to understand. And they really stress getting an Navigo pass. It's unlimited travel on all public transport in the city.
Definitely the best way to save money, especially if you plan to explore a lot.
For sure. You can hop on and off buses and metros all you want. No need to keep buying individual tickets.
Yeah.
I want to go back to that idea of going beyond the usual tourist stuff and really experiencing the local culture.
I love that. It's about more than just checking off a list. It's about feeling the heartbeat of Paris. What are some ways the guide suggests we do that?
One way is by going to local events. Check out community festivals, markets, even free concerts and parks. You get to see Paris through the eyes of the people who live there, connect with the city in a deeper way. It reminds me of this time we found a neighborhood festival in the Latin Quarter.
Oh, that was so fun. There was live music, street food, and everyone was so friendly. It felt like we got a real taste of Paris.
Exactly. Those are the kind of experiences that stick with you.
Absolutely. Now, the guide also talks about owning your tourist identity while still being respectful. I'm curious to hear more about that.
An interesting idea. Instead of trying to hide that we're tourists, the guide says to think of it as a chance for cultural exchange. Like, we're not outsiders, we're ambassadors from our own cultures, eager to learn from the Parisians, but also share our own unique perspectives.
That's a great way to look at it. It's about finding that balance between respecting their way of life and celebrating who we are. It's about seeing travel as more than just seeing new places. It's about connecting with people and understanding the world better.
Absolutely. It's about those real interactions that make a difference for both us and the people we meet.
So to everyone listening, as you get ready for your trip to Paris, think about how you can embrace this cultural exchange. How can you use your perspective as a visitor to connect with the Parisians and create those shared moments?
Maybe you could chat with a local shopkeeper, ask them about their favorite spots in the neighborhood. Or maybe check out a community event, a local concert, a market. Get a feel for the rhythm of Parisian life.
It's about going beyond the tourist checklist and finding those authentic moments that show you the real Paris.
And as you do all that, remember, approach every interaction with respect. Be curious. Be open to learning. You might be surprised by the connections you make and the things you discover.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to mention one last thing from the guide that really hit home for me. It says, Paris is not just a destination, it's a state of mind. What do you think that means?
I think it's about the way travel can change us. It can shift how we see things, broaden our horizons, and we can bring a bit of that Paris feeling back home with us.
It's like embracing that joie de vivre, that Parisian way of enjoying life, finding beauty in the everyday, and slowing down, appreciating the little things. We can take that with us wherever we go.
So well said. So to everyone listening, as you get ready for your Paris adventure, remember to be present, be curious, be open to whatever comes your way, and most importantly, be yourself.
Embrace being a visitor, but do it with grace, respect, and a real desire to connect with the heart of this amazing city.
Remember, Paris Visitor Essentials is more than just a guidebook. It's like a friend to help you along the way.
And until next time, bon voyage.
Welcome back. Talking about that Parisian slow down and enjoy vibe, it made me think about conversations in France. It's like its own art form over there.
It really is. There's a rhythm to it, a flow that's so different from what we're used to. I remember feeling a little awkward about my French at first, like scared of messing up, but the guide actually talks about that.
Oh, it does. It does. It tells you to embrace those mess-ups, those oops moments. Don't see them as failures. See them as chances to learn, to connect. Parisians, they usually appreciate the effort, even if your French is far from perfect. I think that's such a good lesson, not just for languages, but for life too, don't you think?
100%. It's about enjoying the process, not just getting it right all the time. And speaking of processes, that Paris metro system, the guide has a whole section on that. I've heard it can be a bit of a maze.
It can be, yeah, but it's also so efficient. And it's a great way to feel like a local. The guide makes it easy, breaks it down into steps, how to figure out the lines, the tickets, even those station names that can be a bit, cryptic. And there are tips for avoiding those crazy rush hour crowds. And staying safe, of course. I remember my first time on the Paris Metro, I was a little overwhelmed, but once you get it, it's easy.
I can imagine. It's like that classic Paris experience, figuring out the metro map. And speaking of maps, the guide also says, don't be afraid to explore beyond the center, those neighborhoods that give Paris its real character.
Exactly. It's about finding those hidden spots, those little cafes tucked away, the vintage stores, those local markets. You won't find that stuff on the usual tourist trail. It's the real Paris, the one Parisians live in and love. Reminds me of that time we found that cute little bookstore in the Latin Quarter, totally by chance.
Oh, that bookstore was amazing. We spent ages just looking through all those old books, and the owner, so passionate, knew everything about books. Felt like we'd stepped back in time.
Exactly. That's what makes exploring so fun. You step outside your comfort zone, you get surprised.
Speaking of surprises, the guide talks about those unexpected moments, those chance encounters that make a trip truly special.
Oh yeah, it's all about being open to those moments, talking to people, even if it's just a quick chat at a bakery or a market stall. You never know what you'll learn, who you'll meet. Makes me think of that time we were having dinner at this tiny bistro, and we ended up chatting with the couple at the table next to us.
I remember that. They were from a little town in Provence and gave us the best tips for local wines. And these hidden spots most tourists never see. We would have never found those places without that conversation.
Exactly. It's those connections that make traveling so rewarding.
Speaking of rewarding experiences, the guide dives into appreciating Paris's history, too.
Yes. It wants us to go beyond just looking at those famous landmarks. Really think about the stories behind them. Imagine the people who lived and worked there, the events that shaped the city. It's about connecting to the past and seeing how it led to the Paris we see today.
It's true. Each building, each little corner has a story to tell, a piece of the big story of Paris.
And the guide helps you put that story together. Historical facts, architectural details, even quotes from literature that make the past come alive. It's like having a personal tour guide right there in your pocket.
Love that. So Paris isn't just a pretty place to visit, it's a living, breathing city with this whole rich, complicated history.
Exactly. And speaking of enriching experiences, we can't forget about the amazing art scene in Paris.
Oh, the art. Paris is like one giant outdoor museum with masterpieces everywhere you turn.
From the Louvre, home to the Mona Lisa, the Venus de Milo to the Musée d'Orsay, full of impressionist and post-impressionist art. It's just breathtaking. There's something for everyone who loves art.
And it's not just about the big name museums. The guide also encourages us to check out smaller galleries and art studios scattered throughout the city where you can discover up-and-coming artists and see some really unique work.
It's all about diving into that creative energy that's just buzzing all over Paris.
Speaking of buzzing, there's the food scene. French cuisine is world famous, and Paris is a food lover's paradise.
Oh, the food. From Michelin-star restaurants to cozy little bistros, from lively markets to those cute cafes, the choices are endless. And the guide is a great resource for navigating all that.
It really stresses trying those classic French dishes, but it also encourages trying things you might not know, finding those hidden food gems that'll surprise you.
And it reminds us to savor every bite, to appreciate the skill and passion that goes into each dish. It's part of the whole Parisian experience, enjoying the food culture.
Now, let's get practical for a moment and talk about transportation. The guide gives us a really detailed look at the public transportation system in Paris, from the metro to the buses and trams.
It really shows how efficient and affordable public transport is in Paris. It encourages us to use the metro and the buses. That's how you really experience the city like a Parisian.
And it offers practical tips on navigating the metro, buying tickets, figuring out the different lines and zones. It's like having a personal transportation expert right there in your pocket.
Exactly. And speaking of navigating the city, the guide also talks about embracing that Parisian concept of flânery.
Flannery, what's that all about?
It's the art of wandering without a plan, just strolling through the city, taking it all in, slowing down, being present, letting yourself be surprised by what you find.
I love that. It's like giving yourself permission to get lost in the beauty of Paris.
Exactly. The guide suggests some great places for practicing flânery, like the streets of Montmartre or walking along the Seine.
It's all about embracing those unexpected moments, those little hidden corners, those flashes of beauty you might miss if you were rushing around.
Now, as we keep exploring Paris Visitor Essentials, I want to bring up something important about traveling. Being comfortable with being a tourist.
You know, I used to feel self-conscious about being a tourist, worried about sticking out or doing something culturally wrong. But the guide actually addresses that.
It does. It says, instead of trying too hard to blend in, we can see being a tourist as a chance to experience a different culture. It encourages us to be open, to learn from Parisians, but also share our own point of view.
That's a great way to think about it. It's like a two-way street. Both the traveler and the locals can learn and grow from these interactions.
Exactly. And the guide gives practical tips for how to make that cultural exchange happen, from learning basic French phrases to just being respectful of their customs.
It's about approaching those interactions with curiosity and humility, recognizing that we have just as much to learn from the Parisians as they do from us.
Now, let's get back to the heart of Paris and talk about connecting with the city's incredible history.
You know, whenever I'm in Paris, I'm amazed by all the history that surrounds you. That feeling that it's coming from every building, every street corner.
It's like stepping back in time, right?
Yeah.
The guide wants us to really embrace that sense of history, to explore those stories behind the landmarks and monuments, and imagine the lives that have been lived within those walls.
From the grandeur of the Louvre, which used to be a royal palace, to the beauty of Notre Dame, every place has a story of kings and queens, of revolutions, of the people who shaped the Paris we know today.
And the guide gives you the context to understand those stories. You get insight into architectural styles, important events, and the cultural forces that have shaped Paris throughout the centuries.
It's like having your own personal historian guiding you through the city, helping you appreciate how deep and complex Parisian history really is.
Now let's change gears and talk about something that's sure to excite art lovers.
Yeah.
The Paris art scene.
Oh, the art. Paris is truly a visual feast, with an incredible range of museums, galleries, and public art to discover.
The guide gives a great overview of the most famous art institutions in the city, starting with the world-renowned Louvre, which houses masterpieces like the Mona Lisa and the Venus de Milo. Then there's the Musée d'Orsay, with its stunning collection of Impressionist and Post-Impressionist works.
And it doesn't stop there. It encourages us to explore those smaller galleries and studios hidden throughout the city where you can find emerging artists and get a glimpse of the cutting edge of Parisian art.
It's about immersing ourselves in the vibrant, creative energy that you feel in every corner of Paris.
Speaking of vibrant energy, we can't leave out the food. French cuisine is legendary, and Paris is a paradise for food lovers.
Oh, the food.
Eh.
From those Michelin-starred restaurants to cozy little bistros, bustling markets, and charming cafes, the choices in Paris are endless. And the guide does a great job of helping us navigate this culinary landscape.
It emphasizes those classic French dishes, but it also tells us to go beyond what we know and find those hidden culinary gems that might just surprise us.
And it really stresses taking the time to enjoy every bite, appreciating the artistry and the passion that goes into creating each dish. It's all part of embracing the food culture, a key part of the Parisian experience.
Now, let's get a little more practical and talk about money. The guide gives us some really helpful advice on managing money in Paris, starting with understanding the exchange rate and how to use credit cards wisely.
It reminds us that even though most places do take credit cards, it's always good to have some cash on you, especially for those small purchases or when you're at a market.
And it warns us about those ATMs that charge those crazy fees, and it gives tips on finding the best exchange rates.
It's about being smart with your money, making sure your euros last.
That makes sense. Now let's move on to something a bit more fun. People watching.
People watching in Paris. One of my favorite things to do. There's something so captivating about observing the flow of life in Paris. The stylish clothes, the animated conversations, the sweet moments between couples and families.
It's like watching a movie unfold in real time with a new cast of characters every minute.
And it reminds us that even in a city as grand and historic as Paris, it's often those little everyday moments that create the most lasting memories.
Now, as we get closer to wrapping up our deep dive into Paris Visitor Essentials, I want to touch on something you don't always see in travel guides: the importance of simply being present.
It's so easy to get caught up in the rush of sightseeing, trying to see everything on your list, that you forget to just be in the moment and enjoy the experience.
The guide reminds us to slow down, to breathe, to take in the beauty around us, and to connect with the heart of Paris.
It reminds us that travel isn't just about seeing new places. It's about opening ourselves up to new experiences, new perspectives, and new ways of living.
It's about embracing those unexpected moments, allowing yourself to get a little lost, and discovering the magic that happens when you step outside your comfort zone.
And it's about remembering that the best souvenirs you bring back from Paris aren't the things you buy, but the memories you make, the connections you form, and the things you learn along the way.
Beautifully said. Now, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to highlight a key point from the guide: the importance of embracing our identity as tourists.
It might seem a little counterintuitive, especially in a city like Paris, where everyone wants to blend in.
But the guide challenges that, suggesting that instead of trying to hide the fact that we're tourists, we can embrace our unique perspectives and use them to connect with the local culture.
It encourages us to be open, curious, and respectful, to talk to locals, ask questions, and share our own experiences.
It's about understanding that travel is a two-way street, a chance for both the traveler and the locals to learn and grow from each other.
And it's about realizing that some of the most authentic travel experiences come from those moments of connection, those moments when we push ourselves outside our comfort zone and embrace the unknown.
Now, as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to think about. How can we, as travelers, embrace our tourist identity while still being respectful and mindful of the local culture?
It's a balancing act, but it's worth exploring. Join us in the next part as we dig into this concept and discover some tips for navigating this cultural exchange with grace and sensitivity.
As we wrap up our deep dive, I keep thinking about what you said about embracing our tourist identity while still being respectful. It's like, how do we find that sweet spot?
It's about realizing that being curious, asking questions, even making a few mistakes, can actually open up some great conversations and cultural exchanges. It's about coming in with humility, ready to learn, and genuinely wanting to understand the Parisian way of life.
I get it. So instead of disappearing into the crowd, it's more about welcoming those moments when we see things differently, when we might learn something new about ourselves and the world.
Exactly. And the guide gives us some practical advice for those moments, like learning some basic French, not just to order food, but to show we're trying, you know?
It's true, they say, language is the key to understanding another culture. Even if our bonjours and merci are a little rough, it shows we care.
Right. And you'd be surprised how often it leads to interesting chats. I remember this one time I was butchering my French, trying to ask for directions, and this Parisian lady, she not only helped me, we ended up having this great conversation about her favorite spots in the area, all because I tried to speak a little French.
Perfect example of how a little effort can make a big difference. It goes back to that idea of seeing our tourist status as a chance to be curious and open, not clueless.
Exactly. It's about approaching every interaction with a sense of wonder, wanting to learn, and knowing that our point of view, even as visitors, can add something to the mix.
So everyone listening, as you plan your trip to Paris, think about how you can embrace this cultural give and take. How can you use your perspective as a tourist to connect with Parisians and make those real shared moments happen?
Maybe it's striking up a conversation with a shop owner, asking about their favorite hidden gems in the neighborhood, or checking out a local event, a concert, a market, just immersing yourself in how Parisians live.
It's about going beyond the tourist checklist and finding those genuine experiences that show you the real Paris.
Right. And remember, as you go through this cultural exchange, be respectful, be curious, be ready to learn. You might be surprised at the connections you make and the things you learn along the way.
Now, before we say au revoir, there's one last thought from the guide that I just loved. It says, Paris is not just a destination, it's a state of mind. What do you make of that?
I think it's about how travel can change us, how it can open our minds, make us see things differently, and how we can bring a little bit of that Paris feeling home with us even after we've left.
It's like embracing that Parisian joie de vivre, that love for finding beauty in the everyday, that art of slowing down, enjoying the simple things. It's something we can carry with us wherever we go.
I like that. So to everyone out there getting ready for their Parisian adventure, remember to be present, be curious, be open to new experiences, and most importantly, be yourself.
Embrace being a visitor, but do it with respect, with grace, and with a real desire to connect with the heart of this amazing city.
And remember, Paris Visitor Essentials is more than just a guidebook. It's your travel buddy for this journey.
Bon voyage, everyone.